What the city is talking about. The news that impacts you. Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll take a closer look at these stories. She's referred to as the Super Bowl dancing granny after taking social media by storm during last year's halftime show at her nursing home. And this year, 100-year-old Jean Morrison was there to take it in again and give us her review on Rihanna's halftime performance.
When we did this interview, we got a text that read, "You can pry my dark chocolate out of my cold, dead hands." We were talking about cadmium and lead being present in dark chocolate. So just how concerned do you need to be? Should you be ditching dark chocolate now? We found out.
The split over private versus public health care in Canada was ramped up this week after the provincial premiers grudgingly accepted Ottawa's new funding offer. But where the lines are drawn now seems to be over the funding for private health care. While some suggest that having more availability in the private system is actually a positive for the public system, others have a different view. We'll talk to a doctor who shares that opinion.
But we start with this. It's a subject that makes some people very uncomfortable. Sex ed being taught in schools. If we trust teachers to teach our kids math and science, why is that same trust not always there when it comes to sex ed? We spoke to a sexuality consultant at one school board who wants to alleviate some of those concerns. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about sex ed being taught in school, and we had just gotten a notice from our school, and I got some emails from parents saying, well, what's going on here? Some parents really have the reaction that basically it's their job to teach their kids that stuff, not the schools. And at the time we raised the question, well, why do we trust teachers to teach math and science, but not necessarily sex ed? So we wanted to find out more about this. Jamie Quinn is sexuality consultant at the EMSB, the English Montreal School Board, and joins us now. Thanks for your time today, Jamie.
Hi, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So when we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, the theory being put forward was, some people will teach their kids sex ed about the birds and the bees, and some people won't. And regardless, they're going to be hearing about it on the playground. So my approach is you want it to be a level playing field. You want all the kids getting access to the same information at the same time. But not necessarily everybody agrees with that. What's your take on why parents are so uptight about sex ed being taught in schools?
Well, there's not all parents who are uptight about it.
No.
Right. Some are worried, yes, for sure, that maybe their child's going to be exposed to something. But in a school, it's in a controlled environment where teachers have been trained to deal with sensitive topics, right? They have the support, they have the staff to be able to talk about sensitive things, and it's easy for them. They're with their teachers all the time, but the thing is that we have to remember is that, a lot of parents will say, oh, it's my job to teach them about, as you want to say, birds and the bees, but it's about sexuality. Because it's not just about genitalia, right, which most people think it is. We want parents to understand that it's a joint effort, right? Everyone always says it takes a village. Mm-hmm. It takes a village to raise a child, and that's what it should be. There needs to be some balance. Like when children see something on the school ground, when they hear something from their friends, they make up stories all the time just to look cool in front of their friends, right? So why not give them the factual information that they actually can use in their lives?
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, knowledge is power. And again, I think we trust our teachers to teach all the other basics. Why not this basic?
Right.
But the stigma is still there and people do get uptight about it. So when you say what it's all about, maybe you can walk us through what are the basics of what's covered, at least at the English Montreal School Board when it comes to the sex ed curriculum.
So the Ministère de l'Éducation du Québec has created this content. So it's been... Listen, sex ed has been in our schools for over 40 years, so nothing has changed there. But now the MEQ has decided to put this in as a comprehensive sexuality education where students are learning about themselves. It's research, it's their developmental, their psychosexual development, learning about themselves, learning to know who they are, what their identity is, looking at the biology, looking at their affective, their relationships, their interpersonal relationships, how they socialize, how culture comes into it. So everything that they're learning is all age-appropriate material, right? So they're learning about their bodies, being able to name their body parts, being able to talk about their feelings, right? To know, body, mind, and heart, how they feel. Learning about identity, right? What is identity? What does it mean? And then looking at some stereotypes, social norms that exist in our world, masculinity, femininity, how these all relate to our lives, and how each person identifies themselves, because we all are on a different journey. Every child is on a different journey. We all have a different background. We all have a different upbringing. So we're just, we're giving students information about, what they need to know to be good humans, to have good and positive relationships as they grow, right? Every child is going through body changes, in puberty, whether it's at 8 years old or whether it's at 16. Being informed, letting kids know that these changes are going to happen to your body is really important. So it takes away that fear of, oh my gosh, what's happening to me?
We're speaking with Jamie Quinn, sexuality consultant at the EMSB. You talked about the age appropriateness. We got a chart. I think it was issued to at least all the English schools, telling us what subjects would be covered at what age. And I found that to be reassuring, because I have no worries, but I was curious, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. But I know some parents, again, Jamie, don't have that same reaction. They simply don't want some subjects covered at all. Like when we talk about, homosexuality or bisexuality or gender fluidity, what do you do when you have a parent that's saying, not only do I not want, you talking about this, they don't want it taught, period, by anyone at the home or outside of the home?
Right. So it's a really good question. A lot of people have their fears, and a lot of people have worries about what's going to be said in school, what's going to be said outside of their home, right? So it's hard. Sometimes we want to put our kids in a bubble and not let them experience anything or see anything. But, the main purpose of sexuality education was really to have a positive impact on our students, to be able to allow them to go through their journey on their own, but also to give them the information that they need. Yes, I understand that you're going to see or you're going to hear about different people experiencing things, and this gives parents an opportunity to say, okay, yes, you're going to learn about this, but, in our home, this is how we do things, right? So everything is public information. You know what's going on in the classroom because you've been given that chart. It's on the MEQ website. Everything that is there is supposed to be taught in our classrooms. And again, it's at different levels. So we want parents to understand, if they do have an issue, sit down with the administration, talk to the administration about what are your fears, what are you worried about that your child is going to see, right? And we're going to come up with, giving them the content. This is what your child is going to look at. These are the conversations that you can now have with your child regarding your values or whatever your religious beliefs or your cultural backgrounds at home. But these identities actually you're living with them, and your child is living with them on a daily basis.
So, Jamie, I'd like to ask just, as you're speaking to Natasha, we're getting some interesting texts here, including this one. Maybe you can just give me a comment on this. Someone wrote in, people really need to stop calling this sex ed. The vast majority of the curriculum is biology, health, and pro-social behavior. The, quote, uptight or worried parents I have dealt with on committees are exactly the ones that will not teach their kids anything. What do you say to that?
I'm laughing because it's a fear, right? It's definitely a fear. Parents, so as soon as the word sexuality comes up, when I've done my trainings to my teachers, they all stop at the first three-letter word, which is sex. So with our adult brains, we think, okay, sex ed or sexuality education. They don't see sexuality, they see sex. And they think they're going to teach my child about sex. That's not what sexuality is all about. And the caller, whoever that was that wrote it in, it is. It's not just the biology. It's the interpersonal relationships. It's understanding who you are. Safety, preventing sexual assault, right? These are the kinds of things that we want to teach our children so that they can grow up in a happy, positive place.
Consent is a big topic of conversation these days. So how is consent handled in the curriculum?
I mean, we start consent in kindergarten.
Wow.
Right? We talk about consent. We talk about boundaries. We talk about our bubbles. You know, we take hula hoops and we put them around our students to say, okay, this is your space, right? You are the owner of that space. So whatever it is, if someone comes into your space, you need to know what do you do? What can I do that lets the other person know that I don't want you in my space, right? So we teach them to put their hand up to say stop, and to communicate, right? I don't want you in my bubble.
In your bubble.
I need my space.
So
we're teaching consent at very, very young ages.
I love the use of the hula hoop so that there's something tactile for them to hold on to. I got to read you this other text that just says, in elementary school, focus on reading, mathematics, handwriting, spelling, and composition. No more woke nonsense.
Ouch.
Jamie, what do you say to that?
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, I would, I wouldn't say woke. I would just say that it's time to expand our knowledge, and the more knowledge we're giving these kids, the better off that they're going to be later on in their life. And maybe this will help children actually grow up in a more safer way.
Last question, because we're out of time here. I'm just curious,
Sure.
Are parents able to opt out if they are just like, no, I'm absolutely not okay with this? Is it an option for them to not have their kid attend these classes?
To straight out say, no,
Yeah.
I don't want my child
Yeah.
having this. No, that doesn't exist.
Good.
But if there is, if a child has had some sort of trauma in their life where, this kind of content would cause them psychological harm, then there is a process.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a process that they can go through that, we're here to protect the children. We don't want any more children to have any more psychological harm
Oh my gosh.
done to them.
Of course not.
So-
Well, I really hope this has been reassuring to some parents because, like I said, a lot of questions were raised when we talked about it. Jamie, I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
That is Jamie Quinn, sexuality consultant at the English Montreal School Board.
Wow, lots to take in
Yeah.
there. And quite the range of text messages from people listening to this as well. Woke nonsense, huh?
The Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
She's referred to as the Super Bowl dancing granny after taking social media by storm during last year's halftime show at her nursing home. And this year, 100-year-old Jean Morrison was there to take it in again and give us her review on Rihanna's halftime performance. That's Rihanna, of course, at the Super Bowl while we all watched. So did our friend Jean Morrison, who is now coming up on her 101st birthday. It'll be, I believe, Jean, this August, right? You turn 101?
Oh, yes.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, so we're back. We talked to you on Friday, Aaron and Natasha from CJAD in Montreal. And Jean, we knew you were going to watch the game. So how much of it did you actually end up watching?
Well, my family enjoyed the episode last year so much, they asked if I would repeat it yesterday, and I did that. And I have to say, when I heard it, I felt my mortality was really upon me, because I didn't feel quite the rhythm I felt last year.
Oh.
And the other thing, I didn't understand a word she was saying. So my criticism is very... my criticism is not very valid.
Okay.
No, your criticism is, I was thinking to myself, Jean, that there's only one review of the Super Bowl halftime show that actually counts, and it's you. Right. You're 100.5 years old. You were the dancing granny last year. You have earned the right to be the voice on whether or not this show was a success.
Critical
so, Jean,
or otherwise.
For you, Jean, it didn't quite cut it this year.
Well, no, it actually didn't. It really didn't. But I'll say with my statement, because it is limited to an older woman listening to something that's accepted in the modern society.
Yeah, but you liked it last year, and it was very modern as well. So I'm not sure that's as much a comment on the show as it was on what Rihanna did yesterday. But I saw pictures of you. You were wearing quite the hat. What was that hat? How would you describe that?
Oh, the hat is fabulous hat, and I was going on the QE2, and before you get on the Queen Elizabeth boat, they give you tell you what's happening all the time, and one of the gala nights was going to be Ascot night, and I thought, oh, that would be fun because I'm into hats, as I mentioned once before, and so I went to a market in Cape Town and bought these really ridiculous sized flowers, and then I picked some green leaves around the place, and then I cut a hole in one of my hats and put it all together.
That's fabulous.
Wow.
And it came out to be this monstrous hat. And as I was in my stateroom with the hat on and long white gloves and a fancy green dress, and then I got a lotion bottle, took the bottom out, and put two fuses in it to make it look like binoculars, and I put that around my leg.
That's great.
And I was standing in a statement, and I wondered if I'd stateroom, and would I dare to go out? And the first person greeted me politely with, "Good evening, Mrs. Morrison." I knew I was on the wrong track, but they burst out laughing. And so I went, and actually I won the prize, and it was a huge magnum of champagne.
Wow.
But I've used the hat on so many other occasions, and people say, "Oh, gee, it looks wonderful." And then I say, "It's supposed to be a joke." Oh, thank you. Then they start
Even better.
laughing. And that's, you know how I like to hear people laugh.
Yes,
nice. Nice story.
and you love to have people enjoy your dancing. So I guess that would be my. You always look fabulous. That hat was particularly over the top and wonderful. But did it impede your dancing? Were you still able to rock out?
Well, I say my rocking was limited because I didn't feel the beat the way I
Didn't
felt.
feel the beat,
I'm with
Natasha.
you. I didn't, Jean. You know, I'm with you. I didn't feel it the way I was hoping to feel it either. And I was trying, and I really do. Like, I loved that she did it all by herself. Do you feel like was that impressive to you, that it was just one woman who was like commanding the stage, or it didn't deliver?
I found that I was a little upset that she used the birth process as part of her act, because that's a very precious and private aspect of our life. But again, I have to say, I'm old, and I have other opinions that the people have today.
I think you're more hip than a whole lot of young people. I got to tell you.
That's probably true. Did you watch any of the game at all?
Well, I didn't, because it's very late for us in this building,
right,
as you can imagine. Like 8 o'clock is late, and so I to satisfy the necessity of the help that put you to bed, then I had to sacrifice that for the game.
Oh.
But the thing is, I can't see, as you know, and so I don't see the game.
You needed to feel, and you needed to feel the beat of Rihanna. I was going to say maybe if she was wearing a hat, but that wouldn't have really helped things, would it? Jean, I want you to know, when you were on with us on Friday, we got a whole bunch of texts of people just saying that they wish you were on with us every day. They say, I could listen to Jean all long. She's wonderful. What a great, great guest. Keep her going until 6 p.m., which is when our show ends, Jean. So I want you to know the love that we got for you.
But
and we want
to sweet, but I have another story that's funny too.
Okay, good.
You know, I never kept a diary, but all kept the funny stories. And this is a funny story that I think everybody will enjoy with me. Would you like me to tell it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, all right. I have a friend again, very, very sick, and I knew she was sick before I got to the hospital. When I got there, I realized maybe I shouldn't have come. I questioned that, and my friend said, "No, Jean, please stay," because she said, "They've just given me an enema, and I have to hold it for 20 minutes." And I said, "When you're old, there's a need to be needed, but to take somebody's mind off their enema really didn't satisfy me."
Nice
and
story.
Part of the story, she became very ill, taken to the hospital again, and she had an operation which was successful, but scar tissue had developed, and unless she could pass air, you know, the word fart, can I use that word?
Sure,
Yes.
you can.
But farting, she said they're going to have to go in again and operate again. And I remembered at that point something I learned as one of the poems I learned at McGill University in the 40s. And the poem was, there was a good lady from Sparta who was an excellent farter. She could fart anything from God Save the King to Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. She could do a gravata with staccato along with a minus castrata. She could boom from her ass box, beeline or mass with counterpoint from La Traviata. Well, you know what happened.
Wow.
She started to laugh, and she farted.
You made her fart.
And so our foundation of love and our affair, not our affair, our friendship was based on her building the story. We laughed about it for a long time. And just 3 years ago, she phoned with bad news. They had operated on her, colonoscopy, and she now had a bag. I said, oh, her name was Margaret. Oh, Margaret, now what's that going to do for our friendship? She said, don't worry, Jean. You still fart when you have a bag. And she said, I think of you more often now than ever.
What a wonderful story.
I'm laughing to the story because we both laughed again. And laughter in the face of death, I have a whole routine about that. And because now my diary consists of all these funny stories because I'm older, and that's the milieu in which I'm living.
How do you even remember that entire poem?
Well, if it's something that makes you laugh, you do remember. You know, because I often I'm by myself and I repeat some of the stories, and I have a grandson that says, Granny, that's not a granny story sometimes. And then sometimes they repeat it because they've heard it repeated.
Wow.
I think it's what we both think it's wonderful.
You are unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. Jean, we want to thank you so much for being with us again. We're going to reach out again soon because you have too many good stories. There'll be more of those to share, I hope.
But you know what? Do I have a 30-second Valentine wish?
Let me check. Yes, you do.
Okay, I just wanted to say Valentine's Day's coming up, and then there was a contest. I think it was CJAD. I really do, but I may be wrong. And it was a weekend at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in the bridal suite. And that was it. So I wrote the poem. For 46 years, I've been hitched. I never thought I'd be ditched, but I felt a lot better when I got your love letter to say you'd ought to fight and switch. So happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day
Jean,
to you. Jean, thank you so much.
You are the best.
Oh, please.
You take good care of yourself, okay? And we're going to talk soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for making us laugh.
Jean Morrison, 100.5 years old, and ranking Rihanna's halftime show.
Yep.
The Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
When we did this interview, we got a text that read, "You can pry my dark chocolate out of my cold, dead hands." We were talking about cadmium and lead being present in dark chocolate. So just how concerned do you need to be? Should you be ditching dark chocolate now? We found out.
So here's the story. Dark chocolate, which we all up until now, I think, believed was, there were health benefits to dark chocolate. We've been told that, right?
Well, better for you than milk chocolate.
Lower blood pressure, better cholesterol, reduced risk of heart disease. And then we find out, I'm watching TV last night, oh, wait a sec, a couple of things in there you didn't know about, which include cadmium and lead, which I don't think it takes anyone who has much basis in science to decide these are not necessarily things you want in your chocolate. So we thought we'd find out from Dr. Joe SCHWARCZ, host of the Dr. Joe Show, Sundays at 3 here on CJAD and director of the McGill Office for Science and Society. Joe, it seems to me you've mentioned lead being found in these things in the past, but I'm just wondering, this new study, which Consumer Reports, I guess, published this, 23 of 28 dark chocolate bars it tested from different brands, among them ones that I've seen them, like Lindt, for example, have pretty high levels of both. Are we supposed to be concerned or what?
Well, the question is how one interprets this so-called high levels in comparison with what is thought to be a safe level. Now, the fact is that with lead, we usually say that no amount is safe, but lead occurs naturally in the environment, so it cannot be totally avoided. You find trace amounts in almost everything that grows in the soil. So because of that, different regulatory agencies have put a number to the amount of the minimum amount of lead that should not be exceeded. And this is based on knowing what cannot be avoided. It's impossible to have zero lead in our diet.
Okay.
So anyway, the FDA in the U.S., for example, has set a reference level of 2.2 micrograms a day for children. Now, California set it much lower at 0.5 micrograms per day. So different agencies come to different conclusions, which means, that the evidence is pretty hard to come by. But in any case, let's take the California, which is the lowest allowed amount of 0.5 micrograms. What does that really mean in terms of what one would consume? When it comes to lead, it's children that we are worried about. It's when the nervous system is developing. That's when lead can cause a lot of mischief. Well, most lead, as you mentioned, is found in dark chocolate. And the one that had the most was 0.28 micrograms per gram. So what does that mean? That one could eat 18 grams a day before reaching the half microgram of lead limit. So think about this. How many children eat 18 grams of dark chocolate a day? I would suggest practically none.
How much is 18 grams relative to a chocolate bar?
18 grams is about a third of a chocolate bar, of a dark chocolate bar.
That's not so much.
Well, do you think a small child would regularly eat a third of a chocolate?
Are you looking at me?
Kids don't like dark chocolate though. They're not. It's generally speaking, they're
anyway. I think that's not it's not a likely thing.
Okay.
But in any case, with lead, one wants to be extra careful. And given the fact that there are chocolates and cocoa powders that have much less lead, it means that it is possible to manufacture chocolates with less lead. So that's where the emphasis should be. Process the chocolate in such a way that it has the least amount of lead. And, of course, manufacturers now are going to do that because this has caused so much alarm. But I think that California limit of 0.5 micrograms a day is extremely low, I don't think that that's a toxic amount, and I think that there would be very few children who would approach that. But in any case, you don't want lead in your diet, let's face it. So whatever measures can be taken to get it out of there, we do that.
And what about cadmium? Because it seems to me...
Well, now, hold on. Wait a second. You've been talking about kids, though, right? And how much they couldn't eat this much. What about us? What about grown-ups? Like, what's our level?
Well, for a grown-up to exceed the grown-up level, it would have to be about a dark chocolate bar a day. But in any case, grown-ups are not as susceptible to lead because lead, its detrimental effects are when the nervous system is growing, not when it's already developed.
Okay.
So it's not a big deal for adults. On the other hand, I also have to say that, the benefits of chocolate have been overblown.
Oh.
I mean, it's kind of a seductive thing, especially today on Valentine's Day, to say that we should be eating chocolate. But the evidence for that is very, very thin. I mean, there are some antioxidants certainly present in chocolate, but antioxidants are not rare in our food supply. I mean, get yourself some blueberries or some grapes, and you'll have a lot more antioxidants than chocolate.
Okay.
Honey, look what I got you, some lovely blueberries.
Dip your blueberries into chocolate.
In chocolate, there you go.
Even better. Okay, but I mean, we've been hearing forever and ever that dark chocolate, at the very least, is much better for you than milk chocolate. Do we still...
That is true.
Okay.
That is true. It will have more antioxidants than milk chocolate. But in context of the overall diet, it's really insignificant.
Okay.
Coffee has more antioxidants. So, your daily cup of coffee, you'll get more antioxidants than from your chocolate. I mean, I think chocolate should be a treat. Yes, if you like dark chocolate, one could argue that it's better than milk chocolate. But I think the difference is minimal.
Okay.
Chocolate is a treat that you should eat for enjoyment, not because it is good for you.
So we talked about lead. What about cadmium? I mean, why is cadmium in there?
Cadmium is also a concern. It interferes with bone growth. It's somewhat of a less concern than lead because it's less pervasive in our food supply. But again, the amount of chocolate that you would have to eat to consume the minimum detrimental amount of cadmium is not the amount that most people would consume. I mean, most people, I don't think, consume a whole bar of dark chocolate every day. Some, I assume some chocoholics do, but we don't see chocoholics dropping in the street, right? So we don't really have any evidence that people who love chocolate are in any way worse off.
Okay. Listen, as far as the milk chocolate goes, just so I understand, the issue there was sugar, right? There's not anywhere near as much sugar in dark as there is in milk?
That's right.
Okay.
There's more sugar, certainly, in milk chocolate.
Joe, we have 30 seconds. I need you to just let everyone know so we can rest safe today. I heard the White House press secretary let us know there are no aliens, no extraterrestrials in these balloons. Have you seen anything to let us be concerned or to have us be concerned?
No. Okay, I think the aliens probably are walking among us, dressed up like humans, but they actually look like lizard people. But they have a human coding. So
I knew it.
Difficult to recognize.
Yeah, except for they'll be eating dark chocolate, which is a tip-off.
Okay, last second, the question. Yeah. How did you guys like the halftime show?
Natasha thought it was great. I thought it was just, okay.
It's not one that's going to go down in the history books, but I enjoyed it.
And you?
I thought that the dancing, the choreography.
Yes.
The production was amazing.
Yes, but I think Rihanna was not necessary in the show.
Oh!
Joe, bite your chocolate tongue. Wow.
Dr. Joe.
The Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
The split over private versus public healthcare in Canada was ramped up this week after the provincial premiers grudgingly accepted Ottawa's new funding offer. But where the lines are drawn now seems to be over the funding for private health care. While some suggest that having more availability in the private system is actually a positive for the public system, others have a different view. We'll talk to a doctor who shares that opinion.
The for-profit increase of for-profit delivery of care means that nurses and healthcare workers in hospitals, emergency rooms are being poached, are being stolen to go to the for-profit clinics. It means that right now people are getting cash for care. For those who don't have that money, they have to wait. There's already two-tier care. But I am surprised that Justin Trudeau has done a major flip-flop. He used to be against for-profit care, now thinks it's a good thing. So in our Opposition Day motion, we're putting a choice in front of parliamentarians today. Do they believe that we should strengthen our public healthcare system so that no one has to wait to see a doctor? Or do they agree with the Conservatives and the Liberals that a for-profit, American-style healthcare system is a good thing?
That's Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP. His take on this whole public versus private healthcare debate. I just wonder if it's that simplistic. We asked you this earlier this afternoon on our question of the day, but we saw a piece last night and wanted to sort of try to understand something that didn't make sense at the outset, which was a gentleman who needed a knee replacement actually ended up in the private system because he found that it would take him too long to get seen in the public system. His pain was excruciating. He could afford to get it done and did for something like around $20,000. But while he said at the time, and the quote was the one that stuck out to both of us.
He said something along the lines of that he doesn't see it as jumping the queue, but that he's giving his spot in the queue to someone else because he has the means to do that.
So that would allow someone in the public system to get in and take his place. Mm-hmm. But as much as that might make sense, our next guest, Dr. David URBACH, who's head of the Department of Surgery at the Women's College Hospital, Toronto, says that's not necessarily the case. Dr. URBACH, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
As I said, theoretically, I mean, when you listen to someone saying, well, look, I'm not in the public system, I'm not going to take a space up, I'm going to go private, it sounds like he's got the right approach when he says it opens up a space. You're suggesting that's not the case?
Well, it certainly sounds very appealing. The evidence, though, really suggests otherwise. And we've seen this now over the decades in many countries where there's been intentional decisions to increase use of private care in systems that have both public and private delivery. For example, in Australia, New Zealand, and Scotland, we've also had some experiments in Canadian provinces. And in every single circumstance, what happens is the waits in the public system increase, even while some people do get access to quicker care on the private for-profit side, as you saw in the story you just described.
Why I'm asking a simplistic question. Why is that? Why does one equal the other?
Well, the simplest way to explain it is that we're limited by our people. We don't have an indefinite supply of healthcare providers. That's not just surgeons and anesthetists, although those are limiting, but right now nursing is highly limiting, respiratory therapists in many places, et cetera, and you cannot be in more than one place at the same time. So when you draw resources away from public hospitals in any way, what that does is it decreases the ability of those hospitals to deliver the services that people need on a timely basis.
Okay, so then is it a matter then of staff, and we would hire more staff and the problem would get better or go away entirely?
Well, that would be great if that was what happened, but what we've seen is that isn't what happens. And what happens is people do focus their attention on the private sector in systems that have split public delivery and private delivery, private for profit. And inevitably what happens is those resources get drawn. So surgeons will preferentially move when they get the capability to provide services in these private for-profit clinics, and that draws them away from the public hospitals. So whereas no one really knows the exact reason why this happens, the one thing we know is time and time again, it's exactly what does happen.
So we got a text earlier, I think it was from Joe, suggesting that the way a tandem system could work is if there was a pre-established scale set by the government so that you weren't able to charge more than that set scale for any services that the patients might need. And then patients can choose whether they want to go public or private. Healthcare workers can also choose to go public or private. What do you say to that in terms of a tandem system? Could that work?
Well, I think ultimately if people want to pay for a service and they're going to pay out of pocket for something, they're going to expect something. So nobody is going to pay privately for exactly the same service they can get, for free in Canada with Medicare, along with the rest of the population. So this is what we see already in some areas of private for-profit delivery, such as cataract surgery, which is commonly provided throughout Canada in private for-profit centers. And what happens is there's a high degree of upselling, various fees and markups, so that people do pay out of pocket several $1,000s. And what they're paying for ultimately is faster access. So it does create a second tier. And part of this is a bit philosophical and a bit based on our values. Is what do we believe that Canadian healthcare ought to look like? Is this something that we're comfortable with? To have a second parallel sector where people can purchase their way to faster care, or have we made a decision that we're all in this together and that it's important to make sure everyone participates in the public system so we're all invested, so we're all responsible for doing what we can to improve that system in public hospital delivery?
Can we have both?
I don't think you can have both. Because as soon as you provide these other options, and as soon as there's the possibility, especially for the wealthiest and the most influential and the most privileged people, to be able to purchase care outside the system, they're no longer invested in the system that we all share, and inevitably resources will get drawn away. And as I mentioned, what we've seen, and this isn't just one or two examples, this is every single example in international studies where through intentional government decisions, there's been an increase in private for-profit delivery. It always takes a toll on the people left behind in the public system.
Doctor, I'm curious about what you said before about we can choose to all work together to have a better system. And I think in theory, theoretically, yeah, wonderful. We should all work together. But practically speaking, how can we all work together to get a better system?
Well, I would say a couple of things we can do right away. One is through creating some coordination in the healthcare system. So right now, for such a big and complex and expensive undertaking, there's not a lot of coordination. And for example, when people are referred to surgeons for surgery, there's no coordinated or centralized way of doing that, and family doctors often struggle to find a surgeon who can see a patient in a certain amount of time. We don't know what these waiting lists are for individual surgeons, but we do know they vary hugely. So, I know the data in Ontario, wait times for total knee replacement vary from as short as a month to longer than 1 year, and sometimes 2 years, just based on the surgeon who and the wait list that they have. So something called central intake or single entry models have huge potential to reduce wait times for everybody in the system. So that's just one example of a relatively straightforward type of system change that could help quite a bit. And the other one is investing in the public hospital system in Canada. We have outstanding hospitals that deliver outstanding care. And right now, governments, and Ontario is the latest one, are thinking of increasing delivery only in these private for-profit centers when there are public hospitals who say that they can provide many more surgeries if they got funding as well. So in my mind, there's no need to only provide this additional funding to these private for-profit clinics when there's public hospitals who do have some capacity to be able to deliver more services as well.
You sound like you're delivering the same kind of message we started off having Jagmeet Singh say.
Yeah, I don't think he's far off on this. As somebody who's studied health systems and surgery for a long time, my final concern, if I can mention it, is that what people are talking about is moving just a small number of procedures to these private clinics. They're not talking about doing the tough stuff. Like this isn't cancer. This isn't treatment of seniors with pneumonia or dementia, et cetera. This is the easy, profitable stuff, like cataracts, like hip and knee replacement, endoscopy. It's very simple to do. It can be profitable in private clinics. When you draw those doctors out of hospitals, they're no longer in the hospitals to provide emergency services and other services that are needed in the hospitals. So we have a bit of a contract for Canadian doctors in hospitals. The doctors are in hospitals because they get to use those facilities to treat their patients,
right,
but they also provide emergency services. And I wonder, I worry what is going to happen if all the orthopedic surgeons are off in private clinics doing joint replacements there. Who's going to look after our fractures and our emergencies?
Fair enough. Can I just ask, in studying this, and you talked about what happens in situations where private and public merge and they always turn out to hurt the public system, is there a system somewhere, a healthcare system around the world that you can look to say that's the way it should be done?
There is no perfect system. There is around the world, every single country, the United States, Canada, Europe, everywhere, there is dissatisfaction with healthcare because healthcare is very expensive and the expectations are very high. And there's no way to square the circle, and we all have to make trade-offs. And this is part of the decision-making that every country grapples with. And a lot of it is based on values and what the population and the public is willing to tolerate in terms of differential access to care. But there is no solution because of the underlying structural difficulties with providing the services that everybody wants, but nobody really wants to pay for.
And therein lies the problem. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Dr. David URBACH, head of the Department of Surgery at the Women's College Hospital in Toronto. You lay out all the groundwork, and then at the end, what's the takeaway? There is no takeaway. The takeaway is we have problems everywhere. The healthcare system, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it costs that much to provide. And at the end of the day, we're kind of back to square one.
I keep coming back to this text that we got from the family doctor earlier, because you think that's the most basic thing, right? Everybody, the most basic thing is you just want to have a doctor. And that family doctor said, that this having a public-private system means that it'll increase access to care, but it won't improve quality to care.
And doctors will leave.
And doctors will leave because they'll go where the money is.
That wraps up this edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a fantastic week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.